All right, so what's the point with the ACT science test? Well, the main point in this introductory PowerPoint is they want to see if you can understand scientific information. So they want to see if you can reason. You don't need to have a lot of facts in mind, but you do have to have problem-solving skills. But fortunately for you, these can be learned, and that's why you're taking this class. Okay, so we mentioned this, and I talked about this a little bit in the first class. There's 3 types of questions on the ACT science test. The first one is what we did on day 1. We went over data representation. Okay, there are 3 sections of data representation on the test. Research summary we're going to do on day 2 of the class, and conflicting viewpoints we'll do on day 3. But these represent the 3 types of questions, and it helps you if you know the differences. So data representation. So a data representation question will give you data to analyze. It'll either be in the form of a graph, a table, or a chart, or a picture. And these are just some of the things that you'll have to do. You might have to select a conclusion supported by the data, or determine the relationship between 2 variables. This type of question is what we did on day 1. And if you go to day 1's practice test, you can see this type of question. Okay, fortunately for you, data representation is usually the kind of question that the students think is easiest. There'll be 5 questions per passage, so you want to give yourself about 3 minutes to complete 5 questions. So that's going to be averaging about 45 seconds a question. And something to keep in mind on the data representation, pay careful attention to the titles and to the axis labels. So what's on the graph that you're looking at? That's going to be important. Okay, the second type of question is research summary. And this gives you the descriptions of how scientific specific experiments were carried out and a summary of the results. This is the type of question that we'll do on day 2. So the second Tuesday of class, you might have to identify experimental design differences, predict the outcome if the design is changed, identify the hypothesis. So these are some things that you'll have to do. But again, you don't have to know any facts, which is good for you. Okay, this is considered to be the medium difficulty for most students. And there's an extra question, so you have 6 seconds per passage. So answer the questions about one experiment first, then answer the questions about the other experiment, and then finally you're going to answer the questions that combine 2 or more experiments. All right, the third type of question on the ACT science test is called conflicting viewpoints. So this will give you different hypothesis theories or viewpoints of 2 to 3 different scientists. So you might have to determine each scientist's position, or select the evidence that supports the viewpoints of 1 or more scientists, or determine the similarities and differences between viewpoints. So these are all things that you might have to do on the conflicting viewpoints part of the ACT science test. Okay, this section of the test is all text, and it's usually considered the hardest. There are 7 questions per passage, and you usually only have 1 conflicting viewpoint. We will spend our 3rd day going over conflicting viewpoint, but this is the 3rd type of section. And one tip I give my students is to underline or circle the main point for each viewpoint and identify how they differ before you move to the questions. Okay, so we did this in day 1, but how fast do I need to go? Okay, to help with that speed, because the ACT is a time test, here's some tips to help. These are general test taking strategies that will help you manage and navigate the time. So one thing I would say is pick a letter, A, B, C, or D, and immediately skip to the end of the text and mark the last 5 questions of the science section with that letter. it doesn't matter which one you use, but just pick a letter. Don't skip around. The reason is you don't get penalized for guessing. So when you run out of time, you'll have something down. You'll get points for those. And mentally, it's nice because that's 5 questions you don't have to think about unless you have time, and then go back and do them. But if you don't have time, no worries. You've guessed, and you're going to get probably at least 1 point out of them. And then, like I said, if you get there with time, erase what you put in and change your answers to the real ones. You might want to take 30 seconds and preview the section. Mark the passages as data representation, research summary, or conflicting viewpoints. And then preview when you get to a section, go to the question stems and look for key words. Okay, when you do read through the passage, and I usually do this after looking at the first question, you don't have to read it for complete understanding. You can read it just to get the lay of the land. And as you go through, put a star or arrow next to words that ring a bell from having seen them in the question stems. This will make the passage easier to refer back to later. If there's any differences, make sure you mark them. And then use the answer choices for guidance. Lots of times the answers ask for a wide range of values rather than a very specific value. Don't waste your time finding the answer that's more precise than what you need. Okay, and we'll practice this when we're in the class. If you're struggling, eliminate choices, guess, and move on. You can always come back to it at the end if there's time, and if not, you've made an educated guess. Okay? So practice is the best advice I can give you. Take your time, put some time into practicing, and it can go a long way. And we'll be together for the next 3 Tuesdays going over ways to make sure that you can maximize your score in the ACT Science section.